I'm Beth, and these are my memories. To the complex and precious people who appear in them, thank you. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. You shaped me, and I carry you still. In remembering, I've come to see us all more clearly, not as villains or saints, but as humans doing the best we knew how. I must have forgotten. Until now. Both of my grandmas tended to entrust me with trinkets. Somehow, even as a child, I was the repository for family stories and doodads that needed to be saved. One such doodad is a little brass pin that I've had since I was 10 that was given to me by Grandma Helen. My Grandma Helen and Grandpa Deloyd got married in 1936 when Grandma was 18 and Grandpa was 21. Had she been given more time to decide, she might not have married him, but it turned into a social emergency because Grandma fell pregnant. She would have been mortified for me to admit that, because of the judgment she would have been pummeled with in 1936.
For shame on you.
Grandma bristled at their 50th wedding anniversary party. Everyone believed a fiction about the timing of my Aunt Joanne's birth. Although most people believed they had been married a year sooner, in 1935, Grandma and Grandpa had actually been married 49 years.
You hush now, we don't talk about this.
I'm not intentionally spilling tea to shame my grandma, but to explain the kind of woman she was. Grandma was duty-bound. She always did what she was supposed to do. She always took care of everyone and always followed the rules. She sewed her own clothes to be thrifty. She made meals using the bounty from her vegetable garden. She canned vegetables and jellies every summer. She had a sweet sense of humor that Grandpa probably never understood. She had a quiet beauty that she never flaunted. And she had strength to endure 50 years with Grandpa. He was gruff, pushy, at minimum verbally and maybe physically abusive, and an alcoholic. My mom, as a little girl, used to wish for her mom to leave him. Grandma just kept going and made the best of things.
Chin up, there's no sense in complaining.
What it comes down to is that if Grandma hadn't become pregnant, she might never have ended up with Grandpa long term. But it was the Great Depression, and having a baby on the way, especially in her own mom's household, marriage was the only real choice Helen had. I say in her own mom's household because my great-grandmother Zora confided that although she was married, she was embarrassed for people to find out she was pregnant with my Grandma Helen. They would know what she did to get that way.
People are going to figure out how this happened.
To have her unwed daughter pregnant would have humiliated her. So Grandma Helen was trapped. She had to get married. I wish she hadn't had to construct her whole life to cover up one human weakness. I almost question whether she even had a weakness. As rotten as Grandpa Deloyd was rumored to be, he might not have given her a choice about the premarital sex that hijacked her whole life. I've never heard anyone suggest that. I'm just going off his personality and what we now know about the culture of non-consent. But if Grandma hadn't married him, Judith and Tommy and I wouldn't exist, because my mom was the youngest of 3 children. What I'm trying to say is Grandma missed out on the fun times of just playful youth, of unfettered young womanhood. She came of age during one of the hardest times in history, and then got railroaded into the wedding chapel. She had a serious life. One day when I was in 5th grade, she gave me a little brass pin, rectangular, about half an inch high and an inch wide, with a texture on the front, and in script just the word, "Oops." A little whimsical pin that would have made people smile during a difficult time when jobs were scarce and money was tight, and she had kept it for decades. And now, so have I. I have a photo of her at about 19 or 20, smiling widely. The day is bright and windy. She's with another young woman I can't identify, and they're each standing with their babies in strollers. My Aunt Joanne is wrapped up warmly. The expression of happiness on Grandma's face is blinding and radiant.
I'm so happy we could get together today. I haven't seen you in so long.
And this is what I think of when I hold the oops pin. This youthful, vibrant Helen, who would spend the next 50 years with an unkind, callous man. Oops, indeed. I've never worn the pin on my clothes. I loved it, but just kept it in my jewelry box. Throughout the years, I can't even count how many times I've moved, how many times I've shuffled things from one treasure box into another, trying to make sure I don't leave something behind. But over the years, somehow the treasure boxes got put into other boxes, and some of those precious things that both my grandmas gave me were somewhere. But last year, I found the oops. It wasn't anywhere earth-shattering, just in a box within a box. And I have more treasures. The golden hoop earrings with the mysterious engraved characters that belonged to one of my great-grandmothers. The set of worn wedding rings tied with a red ribbon. The locket with the photo of my dad in a basketball uniform. The 1890s foreign coin with one side sanded smooth and elegantly monogrammed with someone's initials. Most of these are in a box in my room. Some are somewhere else. It's not even that we lose track or that we don't value them or that we don't care where they are. I know they're safe and they're here somewhere. And when I run across them again, they'll be all the more precious to me once more because they were given to me by women who loved me. Women who had fewer choices than I have. Women who sacrificed to make their families healthy and strong. The least I can do is to remember them with reverence. The Hewlin Lane house was in a lower middle but respectable neighborhood in the elbow of the railroad tracks and Highway 52 in Lafayette. It was within walking distance of my Grandma Irene's house, so I got to see a lot of my grandma, which I loved. She and I were two peas in a pod. Grandma called me Ichabod for some reason I never understood, but I was the only grandkid with a nickname, so it made me feel special. I also knew I had gotten my curly hair from her. She passed it to Dad, Dad passed it to me. Decades later, I would give it to my daughter.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mom.
We were tight. She had HBO back when HBO was brand new. If you can believe HBO was ever new. We still called it home box office back then. The two of us watched Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band together on her big color TV. I didn't understand the movie,
Grandma, do you know what's going on?
and she was weirded out.
Ichabod, something is wrong with these people.
In retrospect, fair enough. I doubt Grandma understood the psychedelic aspects of the film or she wouldn't have bought me the album. But she did.
Yes!
And I still have the vinyl now in an upstairs closet with about 30 other albums that I no longer have a way to play. A few of the album jackets are chewed up because a little rabbit I had in the 80s would hop around and nibble on everything. At least he stopped with the cardboard jackets and didn't ruin the discs inside. I spent 5th and 6th grades at Benton Elementary, where I was the new girl. Along with my friend Jill, we were the two top students in our grade. I didn't want to be stereotyped, so I tried new things. I played on the girls' softball team even though I was pudgy and slow, could rarely hit the ball, and was scared to catch a fly.
Wah!
I also was on the volleyball team and had much more aptitude for that. The ball was big enough for me to see even with my thick plastic glasses, and wouldn't knock out my teeth if it hit me in the face. But volleyball was an indoor sport, requiring the gymnasium lights to be on for practices and games. This was during the 1970s oil embargo, which had led to an American energy crisis when people would see signs at filling stations, "No gas."
And in national news today, there's no end in sight for the energy crisis.
Every night on the news, we saw lines of cars around the blocks and out onto the roads where people were waiting in line, hoping to fill up their cars. One time I was in the car with my mom when she stopped to get gas. She was outraged.
60 cents per gallon for gas?
She was convinced it was highway robbery. But it wasn't only gasoline that had increased in cost. The heating and electric bills had shot up and everyone was struggling to make ends meet. To save money on the district's electric bills, the Lafayette City School District opted to cancel all girls' indoor sports, at least at the elementary level. I don't know if high school girls were spared. Boys' elementary basketball, on the other hand, continued without so much as a hiccup. Shocking. I know. My favorite teacher was in 6th grade. Mr. Russo was very young. He couldn't have been many years out of college, and he favored the good students. And he was also just adorable. There was a class party we had near the end of 6th grade, and he had left the room, just briefly, while all the kids were tossing beach balls around the room. I concocted the brilliant idea to take the enormous papier-mâché globe off its stand and toss it to a laughing but clearly disapproving kid across the room. Despite his head shaking no, I winged the globe in his direction. Just as it left my hands and went a-sailing, Mr. Russo walked back in and caught me in the act. Anyone else, except maybe Jill, would have been sent to the principal's office lickety-split. I just had to sit out in the hall for 10 minutes. I was the teacher's pet, after all. But I told him I was sorry for having done it, and I was embarrassed. It was a pretty dumb thing to do. My dad used to listen to 50s music, so I knew a lot of that. And we would watch the Sha Na Na show on TV. Mom loved Barbra Streisand and the Bee Gees. She still does. I don't know what Tommy liked to listen to, but I do know he never got to experience the glory of the Chipmunks album. My sister was into Sean Cassidy, Leif Garrett, the Bay City Rollers, and whatever was on the radio. And whatever she listened to, I listened to. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, and Rush 2112 made up the requisite before-school soundtrack over the next few years. I still remember every word. Judith used to come out of the bathroom with wet hair and would shake her hair dry while she listened to an album side. One full side just about got her completely dry. I don't just mean sitting still, shaking her head. I mean standing and flipping her whole upper body in 90-degree contortions with her hair flying out side to side. She built up muscles in her neck like a mafia hitman.
Bada bing, bada boom.
But apparently drying her hair this way would give it more body. I guess that was the important thing. I never used this method. With my hair, it would have turned into an impenetrable forest. She got Mom's straight hair genes as opposed to my frizzy ones. In the 70s, if you couldn't afford to buy an album and the song you wanted wasn't released as a cheap 45 record, then you waited for the song to come on the radio to record it on a cassette player. We would sit by a speaker for hours listening for the first few notes of that song. When it started, finally, the song you'd waited all day for, you had to spring into action.
Everybody be quiet, no talking. This is my song. Shut up.
Name That Tune had nothing on us. We were practically psychic in our predictive skills. And there was an unpredictable mix on a single radio station. For us, it was WLS out of Chicago. You might hear David Bowie, whose song Fame sounded so creepy it would prevent me from falling asleep if it came on when I was in bed. And then the next minute it would be Rod Stewart or ABBA or The Night Chicago Died by Paper Lace.
Daddy was a cop on the east side of Chicago.
Music was just music, and there was some awful but so much great music in the 70s. But I really didn't hear much Elvis Presley. Of course, everyone knew Elvis, but even then he seemed old-fashioned to me. He looked like somebody's sweaty uncle in a rhinestone suit.
Go get Uncle Elvis a headband, would you?
Weird. I was walking home from the Benton Pool one day when kids playing on the playground, which was just a big open field, asked me if I'd heard that Elvis had died. I hadn't. And to be honest, I thought, well, wasn't he pretty old? When you're 11, 42 sounds like a life well lived. When I started 7th grade at Sunnyside Junior High that fall, I had decided that I wanted to learn an instrument. I always wanted to know how to do everything, and this was just another thing to figure out. I convinced my dad to buy me a flute. Most kids' parents rented instruments, knowing that kids tend to start something like that, find out that it takes actual work, and quit. My dad bought the flute, a brand new shiny Artley, in a hard black faux crocodile case lined with royal blue faux fur, and told me that since he was buying this, I was not going to quit. I understood the assignment. I would continue to play that flute in every concert band and marching band until I graduated in 1984. Well, except the one year I played sousaphone, but years later Billy would play the same flute for a couple of years. And the plastic embossed label with my name is still tucked inside that worn old case next to the label with Billy's name. But at Sunnyside, I was finding my way. It seemed like this was going to be great. There were prospects here. I could try new things and find new interests. And there were so many kids. I was excited about all the friends I was going to make. I rode the bus every day along with kids from my neighborhood. For the first few weeks of 7th grade, every day when we got off the bus in the morning, the air reeked of the acrid, burnt smell of hot tar being used to re-roof the school.
Ugh, what is that? I think the school's on fire.
We entered the school through the cafeteria doors, where there were food options at lunchtime. At Vinton, we could only choose between a hot lunch or a cold lunch because there was no kitchen there. The lunches arrived pre-packaged in big crates, and we lined up to collect one in the gym where the tables were pulled out every day and then folded up and stacked against the walls after lunch. But at Sunnyside, we could get hot dogs or chocolate shakes or squares of pizza with little round sausages on them that looked like bunny turds. My sister's friend that we called Fish was still at the school when I got there since he was a year younger than Judith. I had a crush on him and was positively glowing the day he stood next to me while we were all outside around the flagpole during a fire drill. The kids in band were okay, but the band director was impatient and grouchy. He spoke sternly to me because I wasn't getting private lessons like most of the other kids.
Do you want to be the one who holds us back?
But my family couldn't afford that. I was determined that I would catch up on my own. But it turned out that was not meant to be. Just when I thought I'd found my footing at Sunnyside, the ground shifted again. My mom had moved to Indianapolis the previous year. Now that she was finding her way there, she needed to liquidate the money out of the house where Dad had been living with us. When the Yulin Lane house went up for sale, Dad and we kids and Maggie's mom Janice, soon to be my stepmother, moved into a newish rental house 20 minutes away in West Lafayette, across a grassy field from a synagogue. There sure were a lot of fields in my childhood, but this one lacked corn and cows, but thankfully no black walnut tree either. We'd had about enough of that business. I picked up the second half of 7th grade at West Lafayette Junior High. I was having school change fatigue and didn't make a lot of friends there. I know my science education was great. A German lady named Mrs. Stout taught me physics using the metric system. She was insistent that we learn it because the United States would be fully using the metric system within the next 5 years. No one would even remember the imperial feet and inches after that.
Huh?
No, for realsies, y'all. For one science project, I made a solar cooker out of cardboard, aluminum foil, and a wire hanger that you could use to cook a hot dog. It really worked. It was too big to take home with me on the city bus, which was my transportation home after school. When my teacher saw me leaving it by the trash, she drove me instead. My solar cooker had gotten me both an A and a ride home. Some girls in my gym class made fun of me. I only had one pair of shorts that I wore for PE twice a week, pink terry cloth with white piping around the legs. Terry cloth was very popular in the late 70s. One day when we were changing out of gym clothes, these same nasty bullies pushed me against my locker and tried to humiliate me by ripping off my bra. I fought like a wildcat. They didn't win. I would have rather died by fire than let anyone see me without my clothes. I found a stray kitten that I named Mickey. He was a little black ball of fluff, and I loved him to bits. He was sweet but feral, and he was not neutered at the time he should have been. One day, Janice demanded that I get rid of Mickey. He had sprayed on the wall inside the rental house. I was wrecked. 4 moves, 4 schools, friends left behind, Nicky the dog taken by the dog catcher, and now Mickey. I never thought before about their names rhyming. Probably some subconscious thing my mind did. I was going backwards in the alphabet. Would the next pet be Licky? I walked across several streets carrying this beautiful little wall defacer and knocked on the door of one of the few girls I knew. She found me at the door, crying.
Do you want Mickey?
I asked her.
Sure, okay.
She replied, clearly bewildered. I handed him over to her, immediately turned and walked home in tears. It was the year I would turn 12, but I wasn't yet. One time, Judith was asked to babysit and wasn't available. The parents suggested to her that,
Hey, don't you have a sister?
so 11-year-old Beth, still months from being 12, was picked up to babysit a 3-year-old child and an infant. What could go wrong? The parents left after telling me to help myself to snacks, which I naturally did.
Ooh, cookies.
The baby slept the whole time I was there, which was fortunate since I didn't know much about babies. I didn't know much about little kids except for my brother, and he was in 3rd grade by now, much bigger than this toddler. The little boy got right up in my face and tried to bite me. Then he slapped my cheek. I took his little hand and whapped it. I told him,
Don't hit,
said the toddler hand whapper. He dissolved into tears and pouted until his parents came home. On the drive back to home, the little boy was in the back seat and ratted me out
Daddy, she hit me.
as we were arriving at my house. I got out of the car and went inside. I was never asked to babysit that family again. Go figure. I didn't babysit at all until a couple of years after we moved again in the summer. Of all the places we'd lived so far, I'd experienced my favorite and least favorite within a period of 6 months. From trinkets entrusted to me by my grandmothers, to pink shorts that made me a target, this time was a flurry. There were moves, transformations, missteps, and the general chaos of growing up. The highs and lows of finding my way and losing it again almost immediately. But through it, I had my flute, the radio, and Judith's album choices. Those trinkets and all of that music were how I claimed my place. Between silence and sound, between duty and mistake. Oops, indeed. And shut up, because this is my song. Thank you for listening. These are my memories. And maybe they echo yours too. I must have forgotten. But I remember now. If this episode stirred something in you, please consider sharing it, subscribing, or leaving a review. Sound design for this episode includes excerpts from MuseHub and Pixabay. These audio textures help carry the memory, shape the emotional arc, and are honored with gratitude here.